Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to the TFT Perspective. Viewers, the BRICS Summit is ongoing inside Kazan. News related to India and China. Before the BRICS Summit, there were news concerning India and China reaching a rapprochement considering their border issues, their outstanding line of actual control issues. And so far, according to the diplomatic cabal of India, of China, they have come to an agreement to disengage from this border conflict. But afterwards, whatever the Foreign Office of India submitted their diplomatic issues with China, as well as melting the thaw, perfect diplomacy skill played by Mr. Moody and whatnot. There was news circulating by the retired Indian defense analysts, including some journalists and prominent current government members, which includes some prominent BJP figures as well, who said it otherwise, because they said that rapprochement, in fact, was directly in favor of the Chinese. They're not going back. Whatever India is suggesting on paper, that's not the reality. So we are going to discuss as to what kind of a rapprochement was this. Was this because of the recent pressures being, infused by the Americans and the Western powers against India? Or was it something else? In fact, when it comes to the BRICS summit, maybe Russia wanted China and India to hold off things on their bilateral issues and discuss a more global, specific issues considering the de-dollarization campaign. So we have with us Mr. Wakar K. Korvi. Sir, there are few things that come into mind. Previously, you did mention that the rapprochement being done by India with China, there were news circulating inside the Indian media. In fact, we have a video right now. We're going to discuss that. Let's show you a video about it.
Now for the discussion, we have the map of South Asia, and if you are not oriented with the area, we'll just introduce it. This is basically India-China border, which is 3,500 kilometer long undemarcated border. This is the longest undemarcated border in the world, and if you start from the east, and I'll just mark it, just follow it. This is basically Arunachal Pradesh, which the Chinese call Tibet. Then there is India-China border with Bhutan. Again, we have India-China border at Sikkim. Then we have China-Nepal border. And from Uttarakhand, you have again India-China border. This is all undemarcated border. This goes right up to Daulat Beg Oldi. Now for the purpose of clarity, I'll just highlight the border where India and China are across the LOC. Now we come to the area of interest for today's podcast. This is Eastern Ladakh, occupied Ladakh, and here if you look at its central portion, you have Aksai-Chin, which was captured by China in 1962 Indo-China War, and important points where India and China had the latest conflict was mainly Eastern Ladakh. So you have Demchok, Pangong Lake area, the famous area with fingers, which is again occupied by China. Gogra Heights. Then you have Galwan River, where Colonel Babu lost his life with I think 30 to 40 Indians who were killed, and I think same number was captured. And then we have basically Daulat Beg Oldi heliport, and below that you also have the Dapsang Plain area, where it is said the Chinese have captured a long strip and India then had to move its tanks even from Western Command. So all told, the area lost in this conflict in mid of 2020, to be precise, in June, was 2,500 square kilometers. This has been said by Rahul Gandhi, not me. Some of the defense analysts that they are now talking are saying that India lost more than 4,000 square kilometers of area. And if you look at current de-escalation, what all India has compromised, we'll basically discuss it. Some of the analysts are saying that patrolling will start, but will start from areas which are already occupied by China. So it means India is not going to get those areas back, which was basically the military stance also.
What you have explained here, the conflict started in 2020. We know that this is a highly, I would say, militarized zone, but since forever a single shot has never been fired. And in 2020, according to Indian analysts, a lot of Indian news came about the Chinese incursions inside the Indian-held Ladakh region. So as far as the I would say Kazan dialogue or something, because the rapprochement being mentioned by the Indian Foreign Office, what's the actual news hidden behind all this curtain?
Yeah, I think I've already explained it on the video, the border geography. One, it is the longest undemarcated border in the world. Actually, this is the line of actual control, not an international border. And there are 3 or 4 sections like Arunachal Pradesh, then you have Sikkim, then in front of Himachal, Uttarakhand, and then comes eastern occupied Ladakh. Basically, it's part of the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Now, India basically after I think 1962, when they lost Aksai and they were given a bashing even in Arunachal Pradesh. Chinese came right down to their divisional headquarters. And it is called Himalayan blunder by the Indian defense writers. Later on, there have been effort to diffuse the tension, but somehow, since it's a huge border with the mountainous terrain, ranging up to more than 20,000 feet at places, one of the highest battlegrounds in the world, just like Pakistan, India, in Siachen sector. So it's very difficult really to resolve it. Now, in 2020, and this was COVID's time, mid 2020, the Chinese were doing exercise, and then they on the LSC also there's a line basically called the line of perception. So there's a Chinese perception, then there is an Indian perception, and Indian analysts also say that China does Islamic slices, by nibbling territory, and then India compromises. So all told, in a nutshell, I think it was explained on the map that China was able to take almost 2,500 square kilometers. This was said by Rahul Gandhi. Some of the analysts say it is more than 4,500 square kilometers, and this was a big shame. And Modi couldn't do anything. And then India, came with a stance. You remember, Arnab Goswami, stopping
the suddenness of
the surprise. And yesterday he was praising India-China relation, mind you. And he was saying that this is an answer to the Western, hegemony, and we have decided. So it's just quite funny. But anyways, to cut it short, there's a talk of de-escalation. As I think you mentioned in the intro, there could be a couple of reasons. One is that for BRICS, they wanted to show united stance, which is very natural. Maybe President Putin asked them to, at least have a shake hand. And this was accomplished. And there was a lot of domestic pressure on India that, Mr. Modi, 56-inch chest, is not going to shake hand. As Jaishankar did it to Bilawal Zardari, when he went in the Goa summit of foreign minister, but Pakistan, reciprocated with more, I would say, honorable manner. Then, of course, is there's a lot of pressure coming from Five Eyes, Canada, US, UK, now Australia, New Zealand, and India would like to now play the basically you can call global South card or the BRICS card. But BRICS is becoming a very serious, I would say, undertaking. I'm sure there have been some talks about de-dollarization, of having an alternate currency, and then maybe some arrangement. Then, of course, is a domestic audience for India, and then there is an international audience. And for domestic audience, it was said that it was nicely done. And even some of their media, Godi media, was saying that we have pushed back Chinese, and Xi has been able to, President Xi has, she has been, embarrassed and all that. Whereas I think Chinese media just passed one statement that yes, there are some talks for confidence building. Even Jaishankar said that there's de-escalation. We are going back to 2020 position. Now, big question is coming up, and as the discussion goes, I think I will read some of the tweets also. First, it was raised by Ajay Shukla. Colonel Ajay Shukla was again a good defense analyst, and he was saying that even the army chief, day before yesterday, came up with a very different response. And it has now come in the media, but you know that in India, in case army chief differs with the political leadership, it's a big problem. But this is the first time I have seen, because army feels that they are being betrayed. And they have sacrificed, like Colonel Babu, you remember from Bihar regiment, who lost his life with about 40, 45
Yes, at
Indian
Galwan.
soldiers and officers.
They've
So
even
many-
made a monument out of it.
Yeah, and he was given again, like Abhinandan, one of the highest award for bravery. So Indian army has sacrificed, and they moved a lot of forces from Western Command, from Northern Command, just to plug up, this I would say military situation. But I think more critical has been, I would say political strategists like Subramanian Swamy,
Yes.
and he said that probably it has been a compromise. So all told, these could be some reason, but there is an impression, and they were also taunting Pakistan. I don't know that. Look, she is president, she is shaking hand with Modi, and Pakistan is now worried. Why should be worried? You have your problem. Good luck if you can resolve it. But in case Modi has compromised, I think it's going to have
Reflect
a
poorly on his
backlash.
report card.
Yeah.
So the second question that comes into play here is that did India actually felt the need to do this because a strong macho man figure of Mr. Modi, and then moving closely towards a compromising position, as you mentioned, their army chief was not satisfied with how this rapprochement was done. So if the Chinese can almost every fifth year enter the Indian territory and after 4 years come to a conclusion and do a rapprochement but stay at those same positions, would you consider this as a diplomatic victory for India?
So this is very, very absurd. I was just looking at, as mentioned, Arnab Goswami, the way he responded in 2020 and today, he was considered master stroke. India lost 2,500 square kilometers area. Chinese are not going. And now I'll go through, some of the tweets by, I think, Subramanian Swamy, who's still part of BJP.
He was one of the most prominent advisors for Mr. Modi
and
as well.
he's quite a brain. So first he criticizes the media. He says our media must have the guts to expose lies spread by the government instead of recycling it. If India feels that Modi is being treated by Xi like his man Friday, then they must report it, not be chaplus. You mentioned, chaplus, you understand, is Khushamdi. Then he also said that Modi in future will be referred to as India's Chamberlain. You've been mentioning.
Very interesting.
Britain's PM of 1930s. British PM had made a deal with Hitler, agreeing to Hitler's grab of Czechoslovakia, sparing Poland. The agreement was soon flouted by Hitler to acquire. So actually, I think this is something which applies in South Asia. In case you display weakness, like Iran-Israel conflict, you've seen how they respond. Whatever they had, despite not being a nuclear power, they came up with the military option.
Yes.
But here, India, with I think almost $85 billion of budget, huge army, one of the largest army, I think number 3 in the world or number 4. Air Force, then Mr. Ajit Doval and Rajnath Singh, Delhi.
And the Indo-Pacific Alliance as well.
Yeah, and that's why they're called paper tigers. So I think Subramanian Swamy feels that he's the Chamberlain of our time. Then he talks of particular sector like Dapsang Plains, I think we mentioned in the video. Dapsang resolved patrolling to agreed perceived line of actual control, what India and China have agreed to. Now he mentioned. What is meant by agreed perceived LAC? It means what China agrees and perceived Modi does, Shashtang Dandavat, 108 times before, Xi. And then I think there are more, I would say critical tweets. He said line of actual control means that China says and Modi agrees.
Interesting.
Okay, is that what is China's is China's and what is Bharat is also China's. And then he says that basically China's Xi as one who is not a buddy of Bharatvarsha but a blackmail. I mean, these actually criticize President Xi and We'll not repeat those words. And if you look at the comments, under those, because there are now people also commented, like there is some um, uh, Mr. Arun Sampath. If you have guts, topple Modi's government and file case against Modi, Amit Shah, Donald J. Shankar, etc. for China land grabbing 464. Now he says more than 4,000 square kilometer. I don't know. And then there are people who are abusing Mr. Subramaniam Swamy. So all told, I think this is what is the feeling, and I'm sure now Congress is going to pick it up, because so far we've not seen response. Maybe
Because last time even Mr. Modi did mention that nobody has entered our territory, nobody has come here, nothing has happened. But so much things did happen at that time. So how can the public, accept whatever the Indian government is saying right now?
It's basically go the media. Now, if you look at the media, mainstream media, I'm not talking of social media because they are dominant. They are, I think, millions of bhakts and RSS, karsevaks. If you look at the mainstream media, the big channels, 70% is owned by, Ambani, Adani's,
Yes.
and maybe some other, let's say, Gujarati businessmen. And NDTV used to be a liberal voice, and now Adani has probably bought 51% of his shares. So even NDTV, and then they threw out, I think one of their top journalists, basically he was critical of BJP, and they have been also criticizing. So all told, you're left with digital and social media, and there again you have domination. If you look at the YouTubers, daily, they are praising Mr. Modi, and so there's a kind of perception in India you cannot talk against Modi. Because it's considered, you are basically anti-national.
Yeah.
So they talk of, I think, those urban exiles. At time they will say that this is basically some, Muslim gang, jihadists, Khalistanis, and so all told. But they are also getting a lot of, I think, kick from the Sikh activists in Canada and North America. But now they are also, I think, chipping in. So that's how they control the media. But I'm sure Congress, even if you've seen this political bounce back with this India alliance, I'm sure you're going to have more voices coming from South India, from M.K. Stalin, Mamata Banerjee, and then you will have something coming from Indian Punjab and the Northeast. I'm sure there'll be more voices because so far India has not shared. Just like their agreement with, I would say, Nagas, with Thingaling Moivia, it has so far not been made public. That's why they have their own flag and they have their own army and training academies. So probably it's I think, quite a shameful act on part of Vishwaguru and Mr. Modi as 56-inch chest.
So as what Mr. Arnab Goswami previously mentioned, the suddenness of the move. Do you think that India is planning something long term? Is it considering a more, I would say, economic stability option, especially when it comes to its northern front, which is China? It has a huge trade volume with China and would definitely not want, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't want a big, huge scale war against the Chinese. So if they're looking for a long-term solution of all this issue, at the end of the day, your territory or whatever you have been occupied, you are occupying inside Kashmir, the Chinese are still coming in and they are occupying that area again and again on a repeated basis. So where are they going to draw the line? Because in every cartoon we have a character which always says this is the red line, but they keep on stepping in and he draws another red line, then another red line. Where would that red line end for India?
Yeah, I think this is again a very, I would say, $1 million question. Because some of the Indian defense...
Or maybe I think the Chinese have mentioned that this is our territorial influence area. We are going to achieve that. You can give this to us peacefully or with a fight.
Maybe that's the case. But I think China has been very, I would say, strong on the principal stance. And if you look at the claim of the Chinese, now let's go to that. Other than the Aksai Chan, which is held, and these areas, there's a huge claim on Arunachal Pradesh, almost more than half of the state, actually the entire state, South Tibet. Then they have, also interest in the triangle, India, Bhutan, China border, some part of Sikkim. So all told, if India is ready to shed the territory and become, a third-rate power in the region, so what? I feel that, as in normally when you look at the Hindu business, they say that basically kuch bhi karega. So that could be like the way they've been actually, I would say, licking the boots of Netanyahu. And yesterday he was shaking hand with the Iranian
Sorry, yes, sir.
president, yeah, because there is matter of bricks and oil. So I think they are quite confused, and probably they'll keep getting kicked by the Chinese as well as the West, and somehow compromise on their national interest. There's a big lesson for Pakistan also, that we must stand firm, and for occupied Kashmir, I think we should have an aggressive policy diplomatically and in the information domain, because if it is the state of India, then definitely we have a lot of scope.
Yeah, there was also that the Indian media claimed that now the entire, approach of the Indian military and the Indian government is going to be Pakistan afterwards, and they're going to move their troops over here, put pressure on us. How do you see things unfolding in coming days? If, for instance, from the northern side, India does pull its troops towards its border with Pakistan.
Yeah, the Indian defense analysts are actually advising against, because they feel that from their point of view that maybe Chinese will strike again. At time they come in right in the winters, at time in middle of the summers. India had to then move a lot of forces, because I remember this entire LAC was not held more than 4 to 5 divisions. And mostly they were mountain division. There was no requirement of armor or artillery at that level. And after June 2020, they had to move major part of Western Command reserves. So probably they don't have infantry or mechanized forces to do anything. It's just Rajnath Singh, daily comes up from his dream and starts talking of POK. So one, they don't have capability. Then we have seen it in 2019, the escalation after Balakot and Pakistan strike. And there was a missile posturing, and then they just Modi
Succumbed completely.
succumbed to pressure that Pakistan is a no nonsense country, and they are going to strike back. So we have seen there used to be talk of some conventional war space in the nuclear overall nuclear overhang, that let's say it could be 2 weeks. Now it's shrunk to less than 48 hours, because Pakistan is very clear. And if you look at the capability of Pakistan Army and Air Force and the Navy, despite being asymmetrically smaller forces, they are battle hardened, and especially the army, and they have fought in the mountains, so they are well trained. And maybe India, will get a good response, maybe lose territory in occupied Kashmir. So it's just, I think, rhetoric. If they couldn't do it against China, I don't think so they'll venture against Pakistan.
Yeah, as far as what I have perceived out of this entire situation is like the Modi government seems to have taken everything by word, exactly, that they are being put under pressure by the change of government inside Bangladesh. There is anti-Indian sentiment in Nepal. There is anti-Indian sentiment now in Sri Lanka suddenly. Then in Maldives, Pakistan is already anti-India. Then China. So they are kind of moving towards a more defensive approach rather than, going very aggressive. Because I remember back in 2019 when they repealed their own constitution when it comes to Article 370 and 35A of the Indian occupied Kashmir. They also did mention that we are going to take back Aksai Chin and the Chinese territory as well. Maybe that bravado has come down and they're now bowing to so much pressure, whether it comes from Western powers or whether it comes from Eastern powers.
Interestingly, Indian politico-military, I would say strategists or analysts, they believe that India can fight a 2.5 front. Now, this is 2.5 front is again bought from, let's say American Western ally 2.5 front globally.
Yeah.
So they can fight 2 major and 1, let's say, mid-level conflict. And 2.5 front was China, Pakistan, let's say getting engaged with India in, let's say, at a single time. And then there is, some insurgency, or let's say they call it terrorism in some of the states, maybe occupied Kashmir, Punjab. And India feels that they were good enough to handle that. And now with Bangladesh, they are now saying that no, now it's 3.5 front. And they are also scared. So I would say that it's more of rhetoric. If you look at military capability, they can't even handle China in one war, or for that matter, Pakistan. So mostly it is for public consumption and for the bucks to remain, let's say, very comfortable that Mr. Modi is one hell of a guy. So all told, I don't think so there's any capability. But yes, there is a fear factor. And then there is 2,000 years of, unfortunately, slavery, which creates a kind of complex that you remain actually scared all the time that something is going to happen Somebody's come from Khyber Pass and marched on to Delhi, or maybe from Bengal, or from the tribes in the northeast, or the Chinese, or the Sri Lankans. So there is a kind of, I think, psychological underpinning to that.
Yeah. So that's it for today, folks. Please do leave a like and subscribe our channel. Thank you so much for watching us. Bye bye.